Greetings, everyone, and welcome to episode 68 of Teaching Tales, the podcast completely devoted to sharing stories from the world of education. I am Brent, Coley, your host, an elementary school principal in beautiful and currently very warm Southern California. And joining me today, this is now the second member of my family. Joining me today is my amazing daughter, Meghan. Hi, Meghan.
Hi.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. So we had my dad back on. For anyone listening who was with us from the beginning, I think my dad was episode 6, if I can remember. And now we're 68, and I've got Meghan, my daughter. So this is the point in the show where I typically have the guest introduce himself or herself. So Meghan, I know, how old are you, Meghan?
18 years old.
18 years old, and in a couple of days, where are you headed off to?
San Diego for Point Loma Nazarene University.
Yes, so for anyone listening, Meghan is getting ready to head off to college. We are sitting in her room right now, recording an episode of the podcast, and in 3 days, we're going to pack up the car and take her about an hour and a half south to beautiful San Diego. She's going to be heading off to college, and I have wanted to have Meghan on the podcast had the idea, I want to say a couple of years ago, and I was just reminded, I was listening to Teaching Keating, the amazing podcast by Weston and Molly Kieschnick, and they had their kids on the broadcast. They were talking about opening scenes to movies and how it relates to back to school, and they asked their children what they were expecting, what they were looking forward to as they went back to school. And as I was listening, it reminded me of my desire to have Meghan on, because I have a unique thing that I want to talk to Meghan about. So I think, and I think a lot of you listening will agree with me, that so often we as teachers, as educators, administrators, whatever our role in education is, we read books, we go to professional development events, we do conferences, and we are constantly seeking. If you're listening to this podcast, it's because you want to better yourself. We're constantly seeking to get better. How can we become a better teacher, a better leader, a better administrator? But I think too often we fail to really seek the advice and the guidance and the wisdom of our customers, our students. So what I've done is I gave Meghan a couple questions last night. I kind of typed up some questions. I want to get Meghan's perspective on education, because she is a high school graduate getting ready to head off to college. So she has completed K-12 education. So she's had a whole bunch of teachers, and I want to get her perspective, because again, I think the student's perspective, if we're not asking students what is working, what is not working, I think we're missing the boat on a perspective, on an area on a voice that we have got to be listening to. So I gave questions to Meghan, kind of asking her about her schooling, some advice that she would give last night. She has not told me what she is going to say, which is good. I wanted it to be kind of organic. So Meghan, let's jump right in. So Meghan, when you've, like I said, you've completed your high school career, your elementary K-12 education is done. When you think back on all of your years in school, what do you remember? What are some of your favorite memories?
Well, I think I'll go ahead and divide it between elementary, middle school, and high school.
Perfect.
So for elementary school, I was a part of the school plays at Lisa J. Mills Elementary School that I remember vividly. I made a lot of friends during those productions, and I had a lot of fun realizing how much I loved music. So those stand out in my mind. We also had handball tournaments that I remember being a part of that were just really fun, that stick out in my mind, which are outside of the classroom, but I still remember them. And then inside of the classroom, we had a lot of art projects that I can remember. I can't give you specifics, but I just remember that I appreciated the emphasis in arts that I got to do and the creativity that I got to show. And then in middle school, I was really happy and excited to be a part of the web program my 8th grade year to help with 6th graders when they were coming in.
Can you explain what web, what does web stand for? What is that?
So web is a program full of 8th graders helping 6th graders become accustomed to middle school and all of the changes.
Doesn't web like where everyone belongs?
Where everybody belongs.
Where everybody belongs.
So it focuses on unity and everybody feeling like the transition from 5th grade to 6th grade isn't as scary as it needs to be. So I remember being able to be among leaders around me and great instructors helping new 6th graders was a really great experience. And then I had a great English teacher my 8th grade year, Dr. Spivey, who actually retired after he was finished teaching me and my fellow 8th graders. And I'm incredibly grateful that I was a part of his last class because he set me up for amazing accomplishments in high school. He prepared me for long essays, lots of different research papers, and he helped me to realize how much I loved writing and that it was more than just something that interested me, but something I might want to do after high school. And then in high school, I was very fortunate to be a part of the varsity swim team and compete for my school, where I have so many amazing memories and laughs and friends and teammates and coaches. They totally stand out in my mind. I was also able to be a captain for 2 years, which I'm grateful for, to have become more of a leader and be able to be the best leader that I could be. Apart from web, it furthered my leadership skills. And then I was also a part of choir. And choir was another place for me to make tons of memories and friends and learn how much I loved music. Like I said about the school plays, and we went to amazing places like New Orleans and Canada, where I was able to sing for lots of different people and realize how much I loved music. And then I also, in my English classes, just loved reading the books that we were supposed to read because I just love books.
You're a reader.
So we read Lord of the Flies and The Book Thief. Those two stand out in my mind the most. The Book Thief's actually now my favorite book, and I wouldn't have known that because I probably wouldn't have read it if I wasn't reading it with Mr. Hafer. Shout out to Mr. Hafer. So, yeah, those are some of my favorite memories and things I was a part of.
Awesome. And again, I'm not surprised, but for so many of the things you said, you didn't mention fractions.
I did not.
You didn't mention that. You mentioned handball tournaments and art projects and the plays that you got to do. So it's not all about the academics. So that's important, but it's not all about that. So the second thing is kind of, you talked about your memories, but if I now asked you to think back again, K-12, and I'm not sure how you're going to answer this if you divided it up, but think back to your favorite teachers. And because I think if we ask anybody listening, like, who is your favorite teacher? I think every one of us can identify at least, I hope, at least one favorite teacher, probably more than one. And my question to you is, who were those teachers? But more importantly, why were they your favorites? What was it that they did that make them, it could be years ago, still stand out in your mind as your favorites?
I have a lot of favorite teachers, and I think that if I really thought hard enough, I could come up with a special thing for each teacher. But I just thought of who popped up in my mind first and went from youngest to oldest.
Okay.
So I first have Mrs. Ackley, who was my 4th grade teacher. What really stands out first when I think of her is how she comforted me when I was the new kid at Lisa J. Mills, because I came from Monte Vista to Lisa J. Mills, who are 2 schools in our area. I had to do a switch, and I was really nervous because I only knew one other girl who was one of my close friends, but only one other person, and I was really nervous about who this new teacher was going to be. And I remember she had me come down, I think a day or 2 before the first day of school, and meet her and see the classroom, which was really great for my spatial mind to see things and meet her. She also had a large emphasis on music in everything that we did. It was an arts-based school, but she just had a passion for music that she infused in her teaching, and always had she had breaks for us to have that would have to do with listening to a song or singing something, and I just remember how much I loved that. She also had a really great classroom. She decorated it with all of our artwork and lots of different posters from her travels too. And she had really great projects too. We did like this gold rush project where we were like in groups of 4 and we were like pretending like we were traveling in covered wagons on our way to gold, and if we answered questions correctly about what we'd learned earlier that day about the gold rush, we'd be closer to getting the gold on this interactive map she made. So that was really fun. And then Mrs. Beckley was my 7th grade language arts and science teacher.
She's amazing.
She's amazing. I love her very much. And that will bring me to my first thing I remember and still love about her is that she was more than just a teacher for me. She was kind of a spiritual leader for me in that time of my life, which I know is not expected of every teacher that you have, so this was very special. She hosted, or she allowed the coordinators of the student venture in our area to come and have their club in her classroom, so she made an environment for us to be able to hear the word and be together with other students who wanted to hear the word, which was great. And I was able to see her a few weeks ago because I wanted to say goodbye before I left, and it was great to talk with her, and she's still very invested in my life, which is great. She's very relatable and approachable. I remember that. I was never afraid to ask her questions if I needed help with anything. I could tell that she actually loved, and she still actually loves to teach, and she really cares about her students. She wants them to succeed. And overall, she's just a caring and loving person.
How could you tell that she
cared?
Yeah. Is there anything you can put your finger on?
She always maintained eye contact. I know that that's kind of a small thing, but I don't think people maintain eye contact as much as they should, or maybe it feels uncomfortable, and that's something small, but I just remember that when I can picture her face. She was always looking right at me. I could tell that she was intent with the way that she was listening. She was a very good listener, and she just would make the time to talk. Like I said, she was approachable. Like, she would make the time to talk to you if you asked her, or if she could tell if you needed to talk to. And then I had a great English teacher for 10th grade. He was also my cinema as literature teacher my senior year, which I really appreciated both of those classes. Mr. Hafer, he had has a genuine love for both writing and movies, and that's why he taught both English and movie kind of enthusiast and movie I don't really know how to describe it, but we watch movies and we analyze them from a literary point of view. And I really appreciated like that new look on movies. But he knew how to have fun. He retired, so he knows how to have fun, but he doesn't have his classroom anymore. He knew how to have fun between lessons. He knew how to have fun in lessons, and he was a great communicator. He knew how to have good conversations with students that weren't all just about the academics. He knew how to ask about how our days were without it being weird or seeming ingenuine. Like, he just knew how to talk to his students, and I appreciated that. He felt like he was on our level. And I just loved how much he loved movies. I could quote movies with him. He would quote them to me, and I would know what he was talking about, and that was pretty great. And then I'll lump together my last few. First, I have Mrs. Garnett. She was my math teacher freshman through junior year, and I greatly appreciate her help.
Amazing teacher.
Yes, she's an amazing teacher in so many ways, but one of them is just the way that she can explain math and complex math, not easy math. Because I took some Common Core classes with her, Common Core math. So they weren't called pre-calculus, calculus, and trigonometry, but that was the kind of stuff we were doing. It was all kind of lumped together, and it certainly wasn't easy for me. I had to work hard to understand a lot of it, but I had the drive to want to understand it, and she helped me to stay motivated, and she really explained things very, very, very well. And she just took the time to explain things more than once, even though it was tedious to explain all of that complex math. And I just appreciate having her for 3 years straight, and just, yeah, it was great to be in her classroom.
That was a blessing.
And then I'll lump the last few. It's my 8th grade teacher I already talked about, Dr. Spivey, my 9th grade English teacher, Mrs. Myers, and my junior year English teacher, Mr. Olson, because they all were very different, but they all shared a passion for writing that made me realize how much I love to write, and how it's not just something that kind of interested me. Like, I knew I've loved books all my life, but I also now, because of them, I'm able to realize that I might want to write a book, or I might want to really pursue writing and not just enjoy it. They all really helped me to believe in myself too, and believe that my love for writing can be more than just a hobby. They all helped me to realize that I had a gift and that I could write, and that I was doing well in their classes, and they let me know that, which I appreciated. And I loved reading different books with all of them too. I can't name them all now, but I just remember that I really, really enjoyed all of their classes, and they were all unique in their own ways, but they all shared that passion for writing that they kind of helped me realize too.
So, as I'm mentally taking notes from what you just said, the characteristics, the common things that you described, passion. Multiple. The teachers who had passion for what they do for their students are what really stuck out to you. Now, those last teachers, the English ones, the ones who had a passion for writing, tell people who are listening right now, what are you going to study in college?
I'm studying writing. It's a writing major, so it kind of branches over lots of different kinds of writing, technical as well as like poetry and creative and marketing, editing, magazine, all that kind of stuff, because I'm trying to still figure out exactly what it is that I want to write about, what kind of job I want to have when it comes to a writing career. So, yes.
So the moral of that I'm taking is for anyone listening right now, when you have passion, if you're a classroom teacher or a leader or a site leader for that matter, that passion, just simply having passion and a love for what you're teaching, you never know exactly what that is going to do. Because I'm sitting across from my daughter who has a gift. She has a gift for that, but the passion that the teachers that she's had has propelled her, and now outside of high school, she is going to continue to pursue that. The other things that you said they cared. I think you said, Mrs. Ackley, she took time out of her day to welcome you, to make you feel safe. Mrs. Beckley, you said the same type of thing. She welcomed you in, and gosh, I love what you said about the eye contact.
Yeah.
That gave me goosebumps. And wow, what, for anyone listening, for myself, what a great reminder that she looked at you when she spoke, and that communicated to you, I'm present. I am
Yes.
I am here for you. I'm listening. You're not bothering me. So, boy, if I take nothing else out of this conversation, which is not true, I'm going to take a whole bunch from this conversation. But if you take nothing else, anyone listening, gosh, eye contact. So once again, you didn't mention, you mentioned writing, but you didn't mention specifics about a lot of things that made those teachers your favorite were the passion, the caring, the investment in your life. So again, if you're taking notes at home on, well, I want to be somebody's favorite teacher, here's what Meghan says, and I think there's a whole bunch of people out there who would agree. So Meghan, for that teacher who is listening, maybe it's somebody who is student teaching right now and getting ready to start his or her career, or someone who's already in the field, what advice would you give to teachers in terms of being a great teacher? Because we all want to be great at what we do. But as I said at the top of the show, I think too often we fail to ask the students, you tell me, what do I need to do to be great? What's your advice?
Well, these are just me. But I think that it's very important to always verbally ask after you have explained something if anyone has questions, because I know that sometimes there are some really shy kids that are just waiting for the opportunity to ask a question. They raise their hand because they're afraid to ask otherwise. And I think that it's really important, because sometimes if there isn't clarification for something and from the teacher itself, they're not going to go ask for it in another context. They're not always going to put the extra effort to figure out what it is they need to understand after class, or have the courage to ask their peers. I just know for me, sometimes in certain environments, and it doesn't have anything to do with the teacher, it might even just be the different students that are around me, I'm not always confident enough to raise my hand and ask. So I think it's very important that teachers make it clear that you can ask questions and say, does anyone have any questions? And like sometimes just saying that is enough for a lot of people to raise their hands, and then a good discussion to follow.
And if it's not raising the hands, to take it a step further, because I think you're right. Sometimes it's like they need permission to raise their hand, but some kids, I think you'll agree, they still won't raise their hand. So making it safe, whether it's, you know what, if you don't want to raise your hand now, come and see me after class, or we've got the tutoring before class, or on Tuesdays and Thursdays after school, or whatever it is. I hear you saying, let them know it's okay
to ask questions, and it's okay to not get it the first time. Yeah.
And let them know I'm here to help you. Awesome. What else?
I think that it's very important to establish a sense of approachableness. I talked about how I felt Miss Beckley was very approachable. And I think I, at least at one point, talked about almost every single one of my favorite teachers had an element of approachableness, or I just felt comfortable with them. And I think that's part of why I feel like they were my favorite teachers, because I had more than just a academic relationship with them. I could actually talk with them. And they, of course, the higher you get through education, you're closer to college, so teachers ask about your future after school. So with my high school teachers that stick out to me, they were the ones that genuinely wanted to know if I got into the schools that I applied to. The ones that wanted to know what I decided to study when I'm leaving. I had teachers ask like when I'm starting and things like that. So I think approachableness is really important, because it also will open up doors to be able to have better discussions about whatever it is that maybe you're teaching, that they'll feel that they can go and ask you extra questions, or if they're interested in whatever the topic is, they can feel like they can ask you for more information, or they could also go to you for more personal things, which are very important too. So I think approachableness is key, because it will just bring more memories in the long run, as you can see for me.
You're building relationships. When you're approachable, students will, if they feel like you care, they're going to come, they're going to talk to you. When you ask about how it's one of those things like, it's okay to ask, hey, I heard you had a soccer game this weekend. How'd you do? Did you win? And actually pay attention, give them eye contact when they tell you about the game, not just, hey, how was your game? Okay, good. Let's move on.
Yeah.
But really ask a question and pay attention when they answer.
Yeah.
Awesome. Anything else?
Yeah, one more thing.
Yep.
To make classes as interactive as possible, and I mean that as in like when you're actually teaching, like I was saying, make questions possible so that there's actual discussions and it's not just students sitting and listening and then taking notes or things like that, which sometimes that's totally fine.
Are you saying that students don't like to sit in a classroom and just have a teacher talk for 45 minutes to an hour straight? Do you think other students feel the same way?
I think so.
I think so. What about adults? Do you think adults like to...
I think so.
Yeah, I think nobody likes to sit and listen. Again, sometimes it's not, but break it up. It doesn't have to always be like that.
And I also, like in that interactiveness, it can be between the teacher and the students, but also I believe that class discussions are really important so that it's student-student interaction, because I think that not only does that make for better learning opportunities when students are talking to each other and seeing how the people around them are learning, or seeing things like if it's history class, how they're like understanding concepts, or how they're seeing certain areas of history or whatever, or how they're just translating the information in things like history class that have to do with people, like how the people around them understand the lessons. I think it also helps to build friendships in students, and when they're actually able to talk with people around them. And I think that is really great, because sometimes kids go into classes without friends, and all it takes is to just do a little bit of talking with the people around them through different projects, different whatever the assignment is, and then they have a new friend, they have someone they can talk to, they have someone they've talked to before, so the next time they go to class they feel like they can talk to them again, even if it's about something different. And I just think that when students are feeling good about talking to each other, it helps the classroom environment, because I've had good and bad classroom environments where sometimes I just wasn't able to talk to the people around me, and I had environments where I went in knowing nobody and then left knowing all the people around me because of great projects or just great conversations.
Give it opportunities to talk.
Opportunities that the teachers gave to talk about things that soon branched into personal things. Like it may have started with just an assignment or like a get to know you thing at the beginning of the year, which I think things like that are sometimes things students grown at, like go around and ask if a person who has been to this state or whatever.
Yeah.
Like I've done a lot of those, but I think in the end it helps create that interactive feeling that then helps with the rest of the year. So
Well, your brother, Ben, my son, I mean, just before we came up and started recording, he said that he made a couple friends in his ASL class today because there were opportunities to interact. And I think also for any teacher listening to that, it goes back to what you said earlier about that, making it safe to ask questions. That if you're a teacher at the elementary level, you know, think, pair, share. When you ask a question or you give a prompt and you give students the opportunity to turn to a neighbor, get with a partner and share what you think the answer is, that makes it safe. Because Megan, if you're my partner and I'm asked by the teacher to think, pair, to share with a partner, I may not know the answer, but you do. You share something, or you share something that prompts or makes me think of something. Now, when the teacher says, all right, who would like to share? Now maybe I'm more comfortable to share, but I wouldn't have been before. And like you said, it's a way to build friends. And when kids are in school, they want to have friends. They want to have friends. So awesome. So real quickly, to close, you mentioned one thing. The last question was, so what is like the no-nos? Like what should a teacher, in your experience, it's like the do not list. Now you mentioned like don't stand up every class period and talk. Never give kids the, that's a no-no. Don't do that. Anything else that we're not mentioning names or anything like that, but just kind of an in general. Can you think of anything else that
yeah, like this is kind of a no-brainer, but don't negatively single out students in front of the whole class. But I think that it would be a no-brainer to think that I'm not gonna tell Johnny over there that he did something bad in front of everybody. But I think that sometimes the smallest things, like even a look that some students can catch that you're giving, or the tone of your voice, which is sometimes hard to control, can be a form of singling out that you may not realize you're even doing, or you do realize and you don't think it's as big of a deal as it is. I know that for any person in any in situation, like tone of voice can sometimes be out of control. Like we aren't always aware that our tone of voice is hurting people as much as it is, because I won't go into detail or mention anybody, but I have one situation that still sticks out in my mind where I was singled out and I don't think the teacher meant to, but it stuck out in my mind.
you still remember it? You still remember it though.
Remember it, and it's okay if it happens, of course, but I think that it's just an awareness of attitude and tone of voice, and making sure that if you do need to talk to somebody, then it does not happen in front of everybody, because it can just really hurt someone's pride. Sure. And they'll remember it.
Well, yeah. And yeah, and I think you said it's okay, not okay. I think we're going to make mistakes. We're going to get frustrated, stuff like that. But you're hitting on for adults listening, kids notice stuff like that. You said tone of voice, a look, stuff like that. The size, kids pick up on stuff like that. So you're thinking, what, I didn't do anything. Well, if you gave that little look, kids may be noticing. So great point. Anything else?
Yeah, I think that sometimes people doubt if the way that they're explaining something is helping anybody, or if it's making any sense to one of the students sitting in the room. But I think that you shouldn't doubt that, because somehow what you're saying is going to make sense to somebody. And if it makes sense to one person but not the person sitting next to them, then I think that's all right too. Because like I was saying about how making yourself approachable and then making it possible to ask questions, I think that in a sense, if a student doesn't understand something or the way you're explaining it, if you have an environment where they are able to ask questions or be open to new, if you're open to new ways of teaching something or new routines because you listen to your students, or you ask your students, is this working for you? Should we maybe read this at another time? Should we do this a different way? And asking what works for the students, since that's what your goal is after all.
So don't shut them down.
If you're open, don't shut them down, and don't worry that the way that you're explaining something isn't working for somebody, because I think that it is. I think that somehow what you're saying is reaching someone's ears and it's making sense, and that they're hearing it correctly for them, the way that they learn. And I think that if you are open to, if your students feel like they can ask you questions and they don't understand the way you explained it, then it's going to be okay, because they're going to ask you, okay, can you explain this again? I just think that's
so. It's
important.
those days as teachers, we all have the days where you're like, gosh, that I didn't accomplish anything. I totally bombed. What I hear you saying is, don't underestimate the impact that you're having. No matter how badly your lesson went, kids are still getting something out of that and taking it to the next level. What you're saying is, if you've built that level of comfort and approachability for the kids who didn't necessarily get it, it's okay. Because
they'll ask you about it.
They'll ask you
for help.
And what I'm hearing you say, ask them. Is there another way that because I think we have to swallow our pride as teachers and be like, we have to get rid of well, I taught it, you didn't learn it. That if they didn't learn it, if the kids aren't learning, we can't call what we're doing teaching.
Yeah, my senior year English class was a lot like that. It was actually a college class. It was a college level class taught on my high school campus, and it was called critical thinking and writing. So our professor was very open to asking us if the instructions for some assignments needed to be worded differently if we didn't understand what he was asking, so we didn't go home and freak out about it. And most of the time we were honest with him, unless we didn't want to hurt his feelings or something like that. But he was open to asking us if we understood, and when we didn't, he was open to actually changing it.
Oh my gosh. And that right there, I think we can finish, we'll close it right there, is kudos to your teacher for
Mr. Schultz.
Mr. Schultz. Thank you, Mr. Schultz, for giving my daughter and the other students in that class for not being too proud to say, I'm the teacher, I know what's best. You asked them. And for anyone listening, it's okay to say, does this make sense? And if it doesn't, and they say, to be okay, let's fix it. That's what we ask of our students. That it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to have to refine what we do. We need to be able to practice what we preach, so to speak, as far as teaching. So, well, Meghan, that was fun. Thank you for taking the time to do that. And so this is, again, normally the point of the broadcast where I would tell the teacher or the leader or whoever I'm talking with, sharing stories with. So how could we find you on social media and all that good stuff? Well, where can we find you? Well, in a few days we can find you down in San Diego at Point
Yes.
Loma, and as you pursue your writing. And baby, I could not be more proud of you. I am so excited to see what you're going to do. And this is the point where it's like, if you choose, as you've mentioned the writing, if you choose to pursue that writing, for anyone listening, I would say in a few years, you'll be able to find her on Amazon. Because if she chooses, there's no pressure, but if that's what you want to do, you're that good, sweetheart.
Thank you.
You are that good. So in a few years, just remember the name Meghan Coley, because she's going places, folks. So, Meghan, thank you, sweetie. I love you, and I'm proud of you. And for everybody listening, thank you. I appreciate you tuning in. And if you haven't already done so, remember you can subscribe. You can listen directly on BrentColey.com on the podcast page, or your favorite podcast catcher, iTunes, Google Play. We're in Spotify as well, Stitcher. So be sure to subscribe, and then new episodes will automatically be delivered to your computer or device. So, Meghan, thank you very much. Everyone listening, thank you. Everyone listening, thank you. And until next time, have a good one.